Welcome to week 6 of our series called Nothing Changes If Nothing Changes. I am so very glad that you are here at the Foundry at this moment in time where we are all about a better you and a better world. We have a live studio audience. Thank you guys so very much for being here and for following all of the rules. We're in week 6 of Nothing Changes, Nothing Changes. And what we've been doing is that we've been talking about, walking through essentially what is the 12 steps, the spirituality, the theology of the 12 steps, things like AA, things like Celebrate Recovery. Now, last week we went through step 5, and we talked about the importance of what we would call confession, that we've admitted to God, to the self, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongdoings. And so now that's kind of where we're at. So we illustrated this with a junk drawer. If you remember correctly, we set the junk drawer out. And this was kind of a good parallel between step 4 and step 5. Step 4 being is taking inventory of what's inside. We looked inside my junk drawer. My wife was not super happy about it, but she got over it. I will have you note that our junk drawer has since been cleaned up. So it is no longer junk drawer. It is a organized drawer of random items. That led us to step 5, which was the premise of the thing. Now that we've identified all this stuff, what do we do with it? We have to acknowledge that it's ours. We have to acknowledge that we have to do something with it, so we confess to God, the self, and to another human being. So if you are new, if you're just catching up, if you're just tuning in, you can go back and catch up on the other steps. You can go to thefoundryc.org and look for Watch. It has all the messages archived through there. You can go to our Facebook page and find them there as well. Okay, good. So today, step 6. Let's get into it. Step 6 looks like this. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, says AA. Celebrate Recovery says it this way. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. James 4:10, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. So, we were ready. We were ready, entirely ready, to have God remove all of these defects. So, step 4, you've taken inventory. Step 5, you confess, this is what I'm dealing with. You've acknowledged this. Now, step 6, we've got to do something with it. We're ready. We're entirely ready to have God remove any of these defects. Now, in order to begin to think through this, I thought it would be helpful for us to contemplate one of the great wonders, the great mysteries of the universe, one of the greatest questions that we have ever asked ourselves or will ever ask ourselves. And that is, of course, which does come first? The chicken or the egg? This is a beautiful little chicken. I have our rooster just hatched like 6 of these little guys. So this little one. I don't know if you can see it very well. I probably should have got the the red colored chicken so that it would stand out better. Can we? I don't know if you can see that very well. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? This is something we've been trying to answer forever. And depending on who you ask, you can get all different kinds of responses. If, for example, you were to Google which comes first, the chicken or the egg, the internet would provide a wide range of perspectives and ideals and opinions about just exactly what that is. So, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? In order to have an egg comes from a chicken, but in order to have a chicken, the chicken is hatched from the egg. So if you have the chicken, you can have the egg, but if you don't have the egg, you can't. And if you have an egg but you don't have a chicken, the chicken has to sit on the egg for 21 days to incubate it so that it can actually hatch. So how does this all work? Well, the internet, like I said, provides all kinds of interesting information about which is which way is the actual way, because that's what we ultimately all want, isn't it? We want clearly defined reason and explanation for how things are and how things work. And so according to some, the answer would be, well, the egg came first, actually, because, if you're following in line with evolution, because chickens are birds, and birds are descendant of dinosaurs, and dinosaurs laid eggs. And so what happened was eventually you had this proto-chicken, which is like a pre-chicken, a very chicken-like bird that's not a chicken, and 2 proto-chickens happened to fall in love, and they happened to have a little egg, and there was this wonderful anomaly in the egg from one proto-chicken to the next, and there was this thing that happened in the egg, and therefore this evolution takes place, and now you have what we would know as the chicken. So they would say that the egg came first. But if you're more on the, like the creation side, that God brought all things into existence and he spoke them, like the story says, then what the story says is that God created the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and so God created the bird, and the bird laid the egg, and so therefore you have the chicken coming first. Yeah. So which one is it? Which one is it? We'll leave that guy right there. What's crazy is whichever side of the fence that I've noticed people land on with this question is that we all have the tendency to think that we are right. We are the ones that are right. We believe it's this way, and you believe it's this way, and you are wrong, and I am correct. Right? Now, here's what's interesting, is that when you look at this question, which comes first, chicken or egg, it actually falls in line with step 6. There's this similar thing that's happening within step 6. The question that we get asked is, which comes first? When you look at it, it says, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So which comes first? Is it responsibility or is it grace? Which comes first, responsibility or grace? There's this paradox that's built into the whole thing. We were entirely ready. That's something you have to do. But it says to have God remove all of these defects. This is something that you do not do. So you have something to do, and that something to do is to do not something. Right? There's this weird sort of paradox. You cannot remove the defects. Only God can do that. But God cannot make you open to God working to remove the defects. We struggle with this type of thought. We struggle with paradox because we want things clearly defined. We want things simple. It's easier that way. We like things to be either or. It's right. It's wrong. It's true. It's false. It's black. It's white. It's something God does. It's something I do. And in this situation, when you look at this, as with most things, it's not really that clear. It's not necessarily one or the other. It's kind of both. It's both. In fact, the Bible is filled with all kinds of paradox. Paradox that we readily accept, although I'm not sure that we know what to do with, but we've been taught to think in a certain way. There's been an ongoing debate in the realm of Christianity. You may have participated in this. You may be familiar with this. Things when it comes to the issues of salvation. Are you saved by faith or are you saved by grace? Well, I'm saved by grace, but it's grace through faith. And so if it's faith, but what about works? Am I saved by the works? Well, if faith without works is dead, then what? And we want these clearly defined lines, but it's kind of like, it's grace alone, it's faith alone, it's works through. It's all kind of actually working. It's all going together. It's not either or. And maybe if we worried less about finding the dividing lines, drawing the lines in the sands about what's what, and began to live into the reality of how do we handle both, we might be in a better place for that. It's not about picking one or the other. It's not about choosing black or white. It's about learning to live in the in-between, in the gray. People get so caught up in being right. No, I am right. This is the way it works. We get so caught up in choosing sides that we failed to realize that they go together. In fact, there's several of these things in the Bible. It's found all throughout the Bible. Let me give you a couple other ones that we've accepted, that we know, that we believe, but I'm not sure that we actually know how to carry this. For example, things like the Trinity. God is three and God is one. Well, how can God be one and how can God be three? And we come up with all these ideas about how to explain it. Well, it's like water. Water can be a solid, a vapor. It can be a liquid. It could be all. Well, it's like a human. It's like a person. I can be a father, a husband, a son. I can be all these different things with different roles. And it's this weird sort of paradox. We don't know what to do with it. And we try to define and separate all these things. And I think it does a disservice. What about this whole like Jesus thing? Jesus is both entirely human and entirely divine. Well, how can he be entirely both? We don't know how to do with that. Or what about Mary? Mary is both a virgin and a mother. How does that work? There's this paradox, right? We don't do well with the paradox. Mary, most people want clarity. We want definition. How can God be three in one? How can Jesus be fully divine, fully human? How can Mary be? We don't know what to do with this. When we fail to teach that it's not either or, when we fail to teach, when we fail to teach that it's bigger than that, that it's both and, that there's tension, that there's mystery, and that there's a certain way to hold all of this. What you end up with is a lot of like formers, former Christians, former Catholic, former Baptist, because they were taught what to believe about these certain issues, but not actually how to handle that. And so I think what happens is people get frustrated without the sense of clarity and not being told how to handle kind of this gray, and then people walk away from the whole thing because they were never taught both. Now, it's interesting because we talked a little bit about this last week, and the idea that as people, we take certain ideas and beliefs that we have and we apply it to vast parts of our lives, and then we take those same thoughts when it comes to the interpersonal self and we don't acknowledge it. For example, we talked about splinters. If we get a cut, we get a splinter. We immediately acknowledge that pain, that hurt, that whatever, and then we immediately go to remove it, to clean it, to get the dirt out, so that it doesn't become infected and cause more pain. We understand this in all aspects of our lives, except when it comes to dealing with like the interpersonal self, except when it comes to dealing with the addiction, when it comes to dealing with the sin, when it comes to that stuff, right? These metaphorical foreign objects that we find within our being, the habits, the hurts, the hang-ups. When we find those, we try to suppress them, or we hold them in, or we hide them. We keep them from God. We don't operate like that with any other pain in our lives, so why do we do that in that realm? It's kind of what's happening here. In other areas of our lives, we will easily accept kind of this non-dual way of thinking. And what we mean by that is it's not either or, but it's both. We apply that thinking to other areas of our lives, but when it comes to spirituality and spiritual things and things of the Bible and God and religion, we often have a tendency to say it's either this or it's this, right? But when it comes to my life, I'm okay with things being both. For example, if I were to have some sort of surgery, if I had a medical condition and I needed to have some sort of surgery on that, I understand that there's a process that works, that a certain way that the whole thing works. I cannot operate on myself. I have to give my permission to somebody else, to the surgeon, and let the surgeon do the work. In order for that surgery to take place, in order for me to get fixed, in order for me to get healthy, the whole thing is entirely up to me and entirely not up to me. Right? It's not either or, it's both. I have to make the decision to allow the operation to happen, but the surgeon is the only one that can fix me and what's happening. Right? We seem to understand this in life in general, but when it comes to who I am and these inner deep workings of what we wrestle with, sometimes that becomes very difficult. We understand that is that really loud? Can you hear? Can you hear at home? Are the people at home here? I brought a backup chicken. Because here's the thing. I got her this morning, I took her away from her mom, and her mom tried to attack me like a mother hen does. And then I had her in the house while I was getting ready, and it wouldn't stop. And I thought, wow, that's really loud. I could hold it for a little while. Does one of the kids want to hold it? Hey, can you be very gentle with it? Come here. Come here. It's probably cold. Yeah. All right. This is your job, your task, your role. Are you ready? All right. Be very gentle. Okay, but I'm going to need it back for part of an illustration later, maybe. You got it? Okay. You can go sit down. It's okay. I'll use the fake chicken. Okay. Here, do you want the box too? Huh, there you go. All right. Good job. There you go. Do you want to take that home? Do you want that one? Yeah? No. You're welcome, Felicianos. Am I not generous? What are we talking about? All right, so we understand this in other realms. Are you not simultaneously both a mother and a daughter? Am I not both a son and a father? Right? I am both these things. It would be crazy for you to say, Seth, which are you? Are you a son or are you a father? Well, I can't separate it. It's not the way it works. I am both. That's the way it has to be. You understand that you can be a boss at your job, but also you can also have a boss who is above you. We have to have both. It's not either or. So step 6 says, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So yes, responsibility, and yes, grace. They go hand in hand. There's a great example of this, Jesus and 2 blind guys in Matthew chapter 9. Take a look at this. This is Jesus heals the blind and the mute. So maybe it was one of each and not 2 of both. As Jesus went on from there, two blind men followed him, calling out, "Have mercy on us, son of David." When he had gone indoors, the blind men came to him, and he asked them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" "Yes, Lord," they replied. Then he touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." And their sight was restored. Jesus warned them sternly, "See that no one knows about this." So Jesus is ready and willing and able to heal. And then he says, "Do you believe that I'm able to do this?" "Yes, Lord, we believe." Then he touches their eyes and he says, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." You see, in this moment, they're entirely ready to have their blindness removed from them. But they need Jesus to be the one who does it. And so typically, like in Christian circles, what happens is we want to debate issues like this. Like, well, so who actually did the healing? Was it Jesus that did the healing because he was the one that touched the eyes of the blind? It wasn't until he touched them that they were healed. No. It wasn't just because Jesus touched them. It was because the men had the faith that they believed that they could be healed. And that faith was the catalyst for all of this to happen. And we get all worked up about all these things. And then all these problems arise with this. Like, maybe we'd be better off to stop dissecting it and understand that it takes both. It's both responsibility and grace. If I go to my surgeon, I have to be the one convinced. I have to be the one that makes the decision to have the surgery. But I cannot do the surgery on myself. That would be weird. And so the surgeon cannot operate on me without my permission. So it's entirely up to me, and it's entirely not up to me. It's entirely up to you, and it's entirely not up to you. How many of you struggle with this? I struggle with this sometimes. How many of you right now are like, this makes my head hurt a little bit, or maybe this makes me a bit unsettled? Right? Because we desperately want things to be either or. We like the lines, we like the clarity. Seth, how can it be entirely not up to me and entirely up to me? It doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's the way it is. This is why we struggle. You might even say that this concept or this idea is some of the underlying wisdom found within the Bible. To stop drawing all these lines in about who's in and who's out, to stop drawing all these lines in the sand with this either or sort of thinking. Learning to embrace and live with the mystery and the tension of it's entirely up to me and it's entirely not up to me. Maybe that's some of the underlying stuff that's happening that we overlook because we're so worried about drawing the line in the sand. There's another example of this lived out through the example of Mary, the young first century Jewish peasant girl. Provides for us the wisdom and the practicality of the Bible that is the foundation of step 6. Okay, so let's read a bit of this story of, you may be familiar with it. Normally it's a Christmas story. But an angel shows up to Mary and tells her that she's going to have a baby. Watch this, how this whole thing goes down. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, you have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end." "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I am a virgin?" The angel answered her, "The Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she, who was said to be unable to conceive, is in her 6th month. For no word from God will ever fail." "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. May your word to me be fulfilled." Then the angel left her. May your word to me be fulfilled. So the angel shows up to Mary and says, "Hey, this crazy thing's going to happen. In verse 34, she says, well, how is this crazy thing going to happen? In verse 35, the angel says, this is how the crazy thing is going to happen. And then in verse 38, she says, I am the Lord's servant. May your words to me be fulfilled. May your words to me be fulfilled. Let me show you this passage in the King James. And Mary said, behold, the handmaiden of the Lord, be it unto me according to thy word. Be it unto me according to thy word. Let me show you in the complete Jewish Bible version. Miriam said, I am the servant of Adonai. May it happen to me as you have said. May it happen. Be it unto me. May it happen as you. I am the Lord's servant. Be it unto me according to thy word. May it happen to me as you have said. Mary opens herself up in a way that allows God to intervene into her life. And the result is that God brings forth from her the one who would be the Savior of not only her, but of the entirety of the world. Mary opens herself up in a way that allows God to intervene within her. And the result is that God brings forth from within her the one that would save her. I agree. This is the heart and the essence of step 6. We are entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects. I am entirely open. May it be unto me. When you adopt the mindset of may it be unto me, you're allowing God to begin to work in you. I've heard it said, may God be working in you to create a better you. I've heard that said around here a time or 3. When we take the posture of may it be unto me, you open yourself up to allow God to begin to work in you. And what you might find is that just like Mary, the thing that God brings forth from you, the defect that God removes from you, the thing that he pulls out of you may be the thing that saves you. But I struggle with this addiction. Okay. But I'm going to present myself to God so that God may work in me, so that he may remove this defect, which may be a part of the saving grace of God. 2 questions for you to think about, take with you this week. 1, are you entirely ready? What does this look like for you? Are you entirely ready? How do you get to the place mentally, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, of being in a place of being able to say like Mary, may it be unto me. May it happen to me as you have said. Right? This is the wisdom, that you come to the place where you are no longer forcing the thing and you are no longer doing things according to your will, but you are opening yourself up to the will of God to work in you. May it be unto me. This is the thing, right? Once we have to get past all of this stuff about having God remove these defects, the goal is to get to the place of being continually open to the will and the presence of God in your life. So, are you entirely ready? What does that look like for you? And the second thing is, what are the defects of character that God needs to remove? Some of these will be very easy to identify. Some of these may be even maybe a bit hidden. Some of them you might not be aware of at all, but you take the things that you know of. You take the things that are obvious, the ones that you should have identified in step 4, the things that you should have confessed in step 5. You take those things and you offer, you choose. You are entirely ready to offer those to God, to let God take care of those things. And here's the thing though, the goal is not perfection. The goal is not that you make this decision one time in your life and then God is going to remove everything and then he'll take everything that's wrong with you and then you're going to live happily ever after. That's not the way this works. This like most of the other step work, is a process. Right? You will deal with what you see now. You deal with those things first, the big things, the glaring things. You deal with those things and then you will eventually come to see other things later. You will go back into the junk drawer and you will find that you have not dealt with all the junk, but you've taken all the big stuff. You deal with that first, you deal with the other stuff later. So the goal here is not perfection. Often the church has conveyed this type of message and it creates all kinds of problems because there's this idea that I've given myself to God, now I've been saved through the grace, through faith, and that everything's going to be taken care of. And yet, I still struggle somehow with this particular sin. I still struggle some way with this particular addiction. And then sometimes I give in to that particular sin, that particular addiction. And then all of a sudden, I'm led to feel like less than because I've undone the perfection that I acquired through my faith in Christ. And now I can never live up to that standard because I've made a mess of it. I think we've got a misperception of how it works. Right? The goal is to begin this practice of continually checking in, this process, to continually ask the question, well, who am I relying on here? Who am I clinging to? Am I open and ready and willing to allow the surgeon to operate? Am I trusting the surgeon to do the work? When you come back to this question of which comes first, the chicken and the egg, this question about how we started this whole thing, which comes first? Were the blind man healed because of Jesus, or were they healed because of their faith through the power of Jesus? What about this whole thing with Mary? Is Mary the virgin, or is she the mother? Did she choose to be this, or was she chosen? It's both. It's not either or. We want it to work either or, but that's not the way it works. Step 6 is it's entirely up to you, and it's entirely not up to you. That's the difficult thing, isn't it? Maybe we could boil it down this way. Maybe we could boil this process into like 2 words. This whole step maybe could fit into 2 words. And these 2 words are this: active surrender. How do you feel about that? I kind of like that phrasing, the active surrender. Yes, it's entirely up to you. There's an active component to it. We were entirely ready. But then there's this other part, the surrender, that it's entirely not up to you, because it's only God that can remove the defects of character. Active surrender, active surrender. It's both and. How fitting, by the way, is step 6 in light of the believer's prayer. Let's look at it again. Step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Now, in light of the serenity prayer, it says this, keep this in mind, and we'll say this together in a minute, but I want you to think through this. The believer's prayer, or the prayer of serenity. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Well, what can I not change? I cannot change the defects. Give me the courage to change the things I can. What can I change? I can change my willingness. I can change my readiness. I can change my openness. And then grant me the wisdom to know the difference. It's both. It's both and. It's entirely up to you. And it's entirely not up to you. Can you pray this with me? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Let's say that again. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and what I cannot change is my own defects. God, give me the courage to change the things I can, and the things that I can change are my willingness to be open. Yes, I believe you can, God, and give me the wisdom to know the difference. My prayer for you is that you will be brave enough to pursue active surrender. My prayer for you is that you will get out of your own way and allow the surgeon to get to work. My prayer for you is that you will learn to embrace the bothness of step 6. May God be working in you to create a better you. May God be working through you to create a better world. God bless. Go in peace.